Hey everyone, so this past weekend I finished playing through the Labyrinth Warriors questline, and man was I impressed with the story from the event. The writing and the chemistry between the characters was so on point, not to mention the way this quest actually expands on the overall narrative of Genshin completely caught me off guard. In any case, today I wanted to talk about the quest from the perspective of Childe and the Traveler. Specifically, I wanted to focus in on how future events could play out, considering how Scaramouche and the Gnosis are still very much at large. As with all my videos, I just wanted to say that these are my thoughts and theories, and nothing is set in stone until it is confirmed by the overall narrative. But with that out of the way, let's get into it. During the Labyrinth Warriors questline, we learn about the mysterious Shiki Taisho and the Onmyodo Chamber's connection to the overall narrative of Inazuma. When we finally make our way to the center of the domain, it is revealed to us that the creator of the Onmyodo Chamber is a man called Kamuna Harunosuke. However, while this is good news for Shinyan and Shiki Taisho, the Traveler and Childe still remain concerned as Scaramouche and the Gnosis are still very much missing. It is at this point that Childe says some really interesting things to us regarding Scaramouche and the Gnosis. Now, before we take a closer look at what Childe says, I think it's important to briefly talk about the current situation in Inazuma. I actually cover this topic in more detail in my Scaramouche video, so if you're interested, you can hop on over there and check it out. But here's the gist of the situation as of the present day. During the Archon quest, we uncover a Futui plot to destabilize Inazuma by instigating a civil war and distributing delusions to the resistance. In response to this discovery, the Traveler and Paimon go to the factory to confront the Futui. When we arrive, we come across Scaramouche, who confirms to us the discoveries that we made while working with Kokomi and the resistance. But before we can confront him, the Traveler is overcome with the dark energy of the Tatarigami, causing him to pass out. But just before we collapse, Yae Miko comes to our aid. It is later revealed by Yae Miko herself that she traded the Gnosis for our safety. She also reveals to us that Scaramouche exhibited some strange behavior during this exchange. Specifically, she notes his eagerness to take the Gnosis off her hands. Shortly after this exchange, the Traveler and Paimon go to confront the Raiden Shogun, where they end up fighting Signora. Signora is swiftly defeated and then is executed by the Raiden Shogun via the Muso no Hitotachi. It's pretty heavily implied that Scaramouche is somewhat responsible for Signora's death. We know that at least 3 days had passed between the exchange of the Gnosis and our confrontation with Signora, which would have given Scaramouche plenty of time to notify the Harbingers and his superiors that the Gnosis was secured. However, it appears that Signora and the Harbingers were completely oblivious to this fact at that time. While we don't know the exact reason why she was talking to the Raiden Shogun, it's pretty obvious given Signora's track record in the narrative that she was there to bargain for the Gnosis. Given her calculating nature, I doubt Signora would just randomly show up at Tenshukaku to just talk to the Raiden Shogun. Despite the suspicious circumstances of Signora's death and Scaramouche's lack of communication with the Futui organization, there was still a very small chance that this was all a misunderstanding or miscommunication. However, in our dialogue with Childe at the end of the Labyrinth Warriors questline, he basically confirms that this is not the case.
I originally came to this domain because I thought that it might have something to do with the balladeer. As it turns out, he's not here. Scaramouche is in possession of a certain Gnosis, and we happen to have lost contact with him. I don't suppose it's a coincidence. Of course, it didn't surprise me in the slightest that Scaramouche would do something like this. My agenda as a Harbinger is to seek out combat, and nearly every Futui Harbinger has an agenda of their own too.
Now, what he says here confirms to us that Scaramouche has some ulterior motive. But what could Scaramouche possibly want with the Gnosis? Well, to get a better grasp on this, we need to talk about what a Gnosis is. Now, so far in the game, we don't have too much information about the Gnosis, but we do know that they allow the Archons to communicate with Celestia, and that the Gnosis empowers the abilities of each of the Archons. From what I gather, just having a Gnosis in hand doesn't necessarily turn the wielder into an Archon. In order to become an Archon, it appears that one must use the Gnosis to resonate with Celestia to receive some sort of divine blessing. Interestingly, when an Archon gives up or loses their Gnosis, they are stripped of their Archon status and powers. Again, this isn't directly confirmed, but after Zhongli gave up his Gnosis, Azhdaha stated that he was no longer the Geo Archon. From this, it would seem that the Gnosis operates in a very one-sided manner. It kind of reminds me of the Dr. Manhattan phone booths in the TV show Watchmen. In the show, the people go to the Manhattan booths to send wishes and prayers to Dr. Manhattan, who is supposedly on Mars. Little do they know that it was Lady True who set up the phone booths to keep tabs on everything going on in the world at large. I think the Gnosis are similar in that Celestia uses the Gnosis to keep tabs on its subjects. However, it's a bit different in that the Gnosis actually gives its users powers and blessings. Anyways, what does this mean for Scaramouche? Well, first things first, I think it essentially means that A is technically only an Archon by name. By willingly giving up her Gnosis and cutting off contact with Celestia, A pretty much gave up her status as an Archon. I believe that Scaramouche is aware of this and he's wanting to take advantage of the situation. With this information in hand, I can see several scenarios playing out from here. I actually outlined these scenarios in my Scaramouche video, so again, feel free to check it out if you're interested. In one of these situations, I can see Scaramouche using the Gnosis to become the next Archon, given his intense issues with A. Another alternative I explored is that Scaramouche plans on using the Gnosis to take the battle to Celestia. In the Unreconciled Stars event, Scaramouche discovered that the stars in the sky are a lie, which makes me wonder if it has caused him to harbor some sort of resentment against Celestia. Given this discovery, perhaps he thinks that the Tsaritsa is not strong or worthy enough to face off against Celestia, so he plans to do so himself. Lastly, and perhaps the most disturbing possibility, is that Scaramouche wants to join Celestia. Given his past history, I don't see him having much love for Teyvat and its inhabitants, and maybe he sees the situation as hopeless and would rather be on the winning side should the day come that Celestia's wrath rains down from the heavens. Obviously, all of this is just speculation at this point, and each of the theories has its weaknesses, but it's just interesting to consider as we await future patches. I'm curious to know what are your thoughts as to what Scaramouche is planning to do with the Gnosis. Let me know down in the comments below. Obviously, the fact that the Gnosis is in Scaramouche's hands weighs heavily on Childe and the Traveler. It's pretty clear from the start of the Labyrinth Warriors questline that Paimon and the Traveler want to talk to Childe about the situation, but can't because of Xinyan's presence. However, at the end of the questline, we do get to speak to Childe, who says a couple things I totally didn't expect.
I'll let the Gnosis run for a while longer. I'm sure it's only a matter of time before you discover its whereabouts. When that time comes, Traveler, what will you choose to do? And where is your final destination? I wish I could stay here a while longer. The more time you spend somewhere, the more joy it brings you when you return. You're like the stars in the night sky, comrade. You never cease to surprise me.
The first thing that really stood out to me is that Childe says that he's going to hold off on his search for the Electro-Gnosis. I don't know if it's just me, but this totally caught me off guard. Given the current situation for the Fatui and Inazuma, this just seems like an odd response. If I were the Tsaritsa, and I found out that Signora was killed, the Gnosis and Scaramouche are now missing, and that all of our Fatui agents are being repelled by the Inazumans, I'd be furious. If I were the Tsaritsa, I would have sent at least 2 Harbingers to Inazuma to remedy the situation. But I think there's more at play here, because up until this point, the Traveler has only really been a petty nuisance to the Fatui. After all, they were able to secure the Gnosis from Liyue and Mondstadt with little difficulty. Inazuma is the first time we really get in the way of the Tsaritsa's plan of getting all the Gnosis, especially when we get Signora executed by the Raiden Shogun. In doing so, I believe that we catch the attention of the Tsaritsa. Now, you could say that she sees us as a threat, but I actually think it's the opposite. I think we've piqued her interest because there's not too many people out there that could defeat her Harbingers. Also, I'm sure she's received reports from Childe about the Traveler and his deeds. At this point, I think the Tsaritsa may be looking to test us to see if we could possibly be an ally in her rebellion against Celestia. This is made pretty clear when Childe basically asks us to find Scaramouche for him. But he goes a step further, which I think confirms my theory about the Tsaritsa's intentions here. Childe gives us an ultimatum, and he asks us what side we will choose choose and what our destination will be. Up to this point, the traveler's sole focus for his adventures has been to find his sister. But given the information revealed during our journey and the fact that the traveler's sibling has joined the abyss, it has become pretty clear that a choice has to be made. The traveler's selfishness must end and he must decide what side he'll be on when he reaches the end of his journey. Obviously, we don't know the end game and who all the parties will be at the end of the journey, but it's something the traveler must think about should he continue his adventure. So that's something we have to think about for the long term, but what about the short term? What does this mean for the situation in Inazuma? Well, it sounds like at some point we may have to team up with Childe to take down Scaramouche. While the traveler could ignore the Scaramouche situation, I think they've actually come to love Teyvat and now would do anything to save it. Since Scaramouche is a threat to the safety of the people of Inazuma, we will have to track him down. However, once we confront Scaramouche, the traveler must decide what path he will take. It's pretty obvious that A and Yae Miko probably won't be interfering in this situation based on their attitudes towards the Gnosis. After all, if Yae and A don't want the Gnosis, there's really no one else for it to go to besides the Tsaritsa. So this means that we may have to turn to Childe for help, but the question is, can we trust him? Based on the Teyvat storyline preview, I'd say yes, since one of our last stops in Teyvat is Snezhnaya. But if we look at the story thus far, I'd say that Childe has proven to be a trustworthy person. In Childe's story quest, we learn more about his personal life and come to know him as a loving and protective brother towards Tusser, Anthon, and Tonia. He also calls us his friends and invites us to join him and his siblings for dinner over at his house. And maybe this is the optimist in me, but even though Childe's been our adversary at one point, these kind gestures from him make me think that he's a dependable guy. Not only that, but Childe's put a lot of trust in us to find Scaramouche for him, and this is something I don't see him doing for anyone else. It's clear that he really thinks highly of us to the point that he's willing to entrust us with such an important task. So for the time being, I'd say we can trust Childe, but who knows, anything is possible at this point. This leads into my next point. If and when we team up with Childe to face off against Scaramouche, how will that battle turn out? Well, I wish I could give an answer here, but unfortunately it's pretty unclear. There's so many things to consider, like will Scaramouche harness the powers of the Gnosis? How much power has Childe gained since our battle in Liyue? And what about the Traveler? What's our power level now that we can use Geo, Electro, and Anemo? For the time being, there's just too many unknown factors to consider. But what I can say is that I really hope nothing bad happens to Childe, because it would really break my heart if we have to give some bad news to Tusser, Anthon, and Tonia. Now I know a lot of people are saying that MiHoYo has been hinting that Childe will die, but I personally am not convinced. At this point, he's our only connection to the Fatui and Snezhnaya, so I just think it's a bit counterintuitive to kill him off right now. But yeah, let me know what you guys think about this down in the comments below. And that's pretty much my theory regarding the Traveler, Scaramouche, and Childe. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. As always, please subscribe to my channel if you enjoy my content. I've linked all my socials down below if you'd like to get to know me better, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!